Get ready for my favorite chicken, broccoli, and rice casserole, all made within a skillet, one dish, stovetop to oven, and you're gonna have a complete meal that is so good, so easy, and guess what? It's gonna become a regular because you're gonna fall in love. Let's make it. For this weeknight chicken and rice, we wanna make sure the chicken has a lot of flavor. And to do that, a quick dry rub is gonna make all the difference. And you might think this seems really simple. It is, and that's the best part. It takes no work. So what we're gonna start with is kosher salt. That's gonna help make sure that we keep that chicken moist and that it retains all the flavor you really want. And then just some simple pantry ingredients here. We have some onion powder. You know what that's gonna do. It has that sweet kind of onion flavor, some garlic powder. Now, the reason I'm using the powders as opposed to fresh on a dry rub can burn when we go to sear it. These dry powders are actually gonna help add the flavor without burning anything. Some black pepper, of course, and then a little bit, or a good amount, of some thyme. So this is dried thyme. And the reason, again, I'm using dried is it's a pantry staple. You don't have to worry about having fresh on hand, but it also isn't gonna burn and it just works really well. And you just wanna mix that up. Now you can use something else, but you know what? Your finger's gonna be just fine because we're gonna use our finger to sprinkle this all over the chicken. So make sure it's well mixed. And once it's mixed, we can start sprinkling it. So what I have here are chicken thighs. Now you could use chicken breast, but chicken thighs are for a really good reason. These have a lot more flavor. They retain a lot more moisture. They're also more economical. But the important part here is for the long cooking time that's gonna take for that rice to cook in the oven, these are not gonna dry out, and that is key. Chicken thighs are really kind of that secret weapon of this recipe. So what I'm gonna start by doing is sprinkling this all over, and I wanna make sure I coat everything in this dry rub. You should use it all up, and we're even going to make sure, now notice, my hands are gonna get dirty, but we're using it all, so that's okay. We're gonna flip them over and make sure we do the back sides too, because we want it to be very well coated. And if you're not used to chicken thighs, you can see here, I'm doing boneless, skinless ones. So if you're worried that like maybe kids won't like a chicken thigh, once they're cooked, it's very less noticeable since they're boneless and skinless. So just make sure it's well coated, and then we're just gonna set this aside in the fridge for a little bit while we prepare everything else. What I'm doing is trying to make sure I get everything else ready. The chicken is just best to let it rest a little bit with that dry rub on it. So I'm finishing up with some onions, some garlic, and this is just going to be our base layers then for when we build this dish with rice. So this is all in one skillet. It's really easy. It's a weeknight because it can be put together pretty quickly, but still be a nice full meal. Kind of like a hot dish, but also kind of not. Or a casserole. It depends where you're from, what you call it. What I'm gonna do is start heating up that skillet so we can sear the chicken here in just a little bit and finish with my broccoli. So what I have here is fresh broccoli. You could use frozen. Fresh is gonna retain a little bit better texture, a little bit brighter color. What we're doing is cutting off for the crowns and then down into florets. Now, do not throw this out. You can just eat this. If nothing else, and you don't know, peel it to get that outside kind of tenuous part off. And then you can just you could roast this up. For this dish, I'm not going to because it gets a little lost in there, but I eat this like I would any fresh vegetable. And it's delicious. What I wanna do though is break down these florets into bite-sized pieces. So when they're big like this, I will keep some of the stems and I will use those, and then I'll break down that head. See how I'm doing that? Just perfect bite-sized pieces. And I don't want them too small, because the thing is, they're going to bake. So obviously they're going to soften. So I wanna keep some size and some texture, but see that stem? Don't ever think you need to throw these things away. I think, beautiful. Tender, when they're close to the floret, they're tender and they're delicious. I think we're way too quick to throw things away because we're not used to them or we think they look weird. They don't. So that's gonna be the broccoli. Onion and garlic ready. I'm heating my oil, and that's to me essential because what that's gonna do is help it not stick, but sear. And that's the key here. So what we have is hot pan, check to make sure it's hot. We're gonna grab that chicken. You don't wanna let it sit out. Why chance it even for a short time? I'm always gonna wanna make sure I keep it chilled. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna put the top side down, because on a thigh especially, the underside isn't as pretty. We wanna sear that top side for a little bit of color. What we're doing, and you'll notice I'm not turning them over. I'm just letting that one side sear. They're still uncooked, so I'm putting them back on that pan because they're gonna finish cooking with the rice and everything in the oven. So I don't wanna overcook them now, but I wanted to get a little color and a little bit of crust because this is our one chance to do that. So you can see we have a beautiful fond in there. We wanna keep all that. And what we're gonna start doing is sauteing our onion. So what this is gonna do is soften the onion, start to build layers of flavor for that rice that we're gonna cook. So we're gonna add it right into that oil, and you can hear that beautiful sear. We're gonna make sure to salt it so we start those layers of seasoning too. And this is gonna season the rice also. That onion is turning nice and soft, picking up all that color from the pan. So So I'm gonna take my garlic, and it's a good amount of garlic because it's a good amount of rice, and you really wanna be able to flavor it. So I'm gonna put this in, and I really just wanna warm it through. It takes a few seconds. You don't wanna burn it. You don't want it to get bitter. Instantly I can smell it, which is really key. So I'm gonna add my rice. Now, of course, you wanna make sure you rinse, drain your rice to get that excess starch off of it. So I always like to put it in a little bit, let it just kind of soak in some of that oil before we add all the liquid. So after a few seconds, we can add our liquids. Now, I'm doing a couple different things here. I'm doing a little bit of heavy cream. What this is gonna do is add a little bit more of that creaminess that I'm used to in my mom's Sunday chicken growing up that had a little bit of a creamy undertone without being overpowering. And we're cutting that, of course, with chicken stock, vegetable stock, whatever you have. And this is what obviously the base is gonna be to cook that rice. Now, what I wanna make sure I do is let this come up to a simmer to make sure that liquid is actually getting heated before it goes into the oven. So that usually only takes a minute or two since we already have a hot skillet, and then we can just add everything back in and bake it. So this came to a simmer. It didn't take long at all, which right now doesn't look great, right? But that rice is gonna cook. So we're gonna finish off with a little bit more flavoring. So some more of that dried thyme, just to make sure that rice is really well flavored. And then also some lemon zest. We're gonna use the juice when it's done, but a little bit of lemon zest to me always brightens anything up. You know, I'm a big proponent of that, making sure you have bright, clean, beautiful flavors, because when you're making food at home, if it doesn't taste good, what's the point? Or if it doesn't have a flavor impact, there is no point. So now to this, what we're gonna do is add this broccoli with some of those stems. Don't be scared of those small stems like we said. You can kind of just nestle it in. Remember that rice is gonna cook, so you don't have to worry as much about that because it's going to fluff up and cook underneath it. So we're gonna just nestle some of this in. And what this is giving us is our greens. It's giving us that starch with that beautiful grain of rice. So everything is really gonna come together perfectly. What we're gonna do then on top is lay what has yet to finish cooking, the chicken. So we have some color on it, obviously, but what we wanna do now is make sure that it can finish cooking in the oven, and that's the key here. Because you don't wanna overcook it, but what we did to kind of counteract that is use thighs, and we also made sure it was really well seasoned and salted, which actually helps, surprisingly. So what I'm doing is just layering all this chicken on top. Look at this, it's a meal all together. And we're gonna cover it. So we're gonna put it in the oven, we're gonna start it covered, and then we'll remove the foil after a while and let it finish roasting. So as mentioned, a little while into baking, when we're getting close to done, I like to take off, and look how you can already see that it's not done yet, but you can see that rice is really cooking. This is when I like to dot it with butter. You could do it in the beginning, but I like it to also kind of just coat that broccoli and everything and kind of be that finishing touch. So what we're gonna do is take that off now and leave it off. We're gonna leave that foil off, and we're gonna put this back into the oven. That butter's gonna just help enrichen and give flavor to that rice. And everything is gonna be finished really soon. That chicken's gonna be done, and it's a full meal, but you can already see the beauty coming together. This has come out of the oven. You can see it's fully baked and you have a full meal right here. Now, I always like to finish it with a nice squeeze of lemon. Since we already used that zest, we have some lemon that we can just squeeze on top. Wakes everything up, finishes it off, and instantly now you can eat. Now, I'm just gonna dig right into this because it looks so good. What you're gonna notice is that chicken is perfectly cooked, but it has a lot of flavor. That's the key here. You want that chicken to have flavor. You want it to be well seasoned. Get some of that rice and some broccoli with it. It's a beautiful bite. It's a great weeknight meal. Okay, that cream in the rice really does add a creamy undertone with a little bit of richness. What I love about it is that lemon on top wakes everything up. It brings out the thyme. Lemon and thyme work in tandem to really bring out the flavor. You have the rice that had all that flavor added. You get that beautiful broccoli with it. It was a great meal. And what's great is if you don't want to make it on a weeknight, make it on a weekend when people are coming over. Don't ever feel like you have to make something that's a big spread. Make a skillet meal like this and everyone's gonna be so happy because it's beautiful, it's filling, and it's delicious, and it's ingredients you're gonna easily be able to find or have on hand already. So that's what I hope you see and get excited about with this food. Share this video around so other people can see that good food is easy to make at home. If I can do this, anybody can do this and enjoy it. Check my website, wyseguide.com, for this recipe, all my other recipes, and until next time, eat something delicious. You'll be glad.